shop frame. Hey guys, Lou here from LT's Custom Woodworks. Welcome to the shop. Today, another day, another dollar, and another dollar spent. Today, I have some picture frames that I have to build, and I always use my miter saw to cut my miters. But on picture frames, I'm going to go the route by building a picture frame jig. The sheer fact that it's more precise. It takes all the measuring out completely, so it kind of I figure why not. I haven't had one in the shop here for years, 4, 5, 6 years, so I might as well build one, and so I can get started on these frames. I've already took the time to cut out for my slides. Now this is hard maple. I got my 48-inch ruler, aluminum ruler. I also cut 1/4 inch by 1 3/4 inches. This is a 1/4 inch smaller than the ruler width, and you'll understand why later on in the video. And I also have here a 4-inch block that I'm going to use to measure my ruler out on the board here. Now this board, this 3/4 inch plywood that I'm using, is 43 1/4 long. Now I will be cutting it down a little bit more, but it's 43 1/4 long by 21 1/2 wide. Again, that will be cut down probably a good 7-8 inches yet to go. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do first of all is get these two glued together, let that dry. That way I can get started on everything else. Now this jig, I've looked at a lot of jigs. I've seen a lot of jigs. I like the jig that Michael Alm built. I'll throw a description on his channel. I'm basically building what he has made. He used a lot of, first of all, he used 2 feather boards on his. I'm not putting any feather boards on these. And he also used walnut for his, for a soft board for his handle. Just for his hand. That way when he grabs onto that ruler, I guess he does a lot of picture frames, your arm gets kind of sore hanging on to the end of that ruler all the time. So he put a nice board there that kind of softens it up a little bit. I won't be doing that. I don't do a lot of picture frames. Even building one this big, this is probably going to be around the 36-inch long, the 3 feet. I don't, probably in the last 2-3 years, I might have built 2 or 3 frames that were 3 feet high. I don't do a lot of them, so the picture frames I usually get are a little bit more smaller, in the 12 inches, 14 inches mark. But I might as well make it so it does it for both, and should be good to go. So I'm going to get started on gluing this up. Before I glue this up, I'm going to sand the back of this ruler. I'm going to scuff it up a little bit, that way I get a better bond. Now to glue this down, I'm basically using I have some fast grab here. This is for gluing FRP onto a wall. It should work. So I'm going to give it a whirl. Now that this is all clamped up, I'll let it sit for a few hours. Then I'll take it out and then clean the glue excess, squeeze out. I've put some washers down just to raise my slide up a little bit. And I went all the way along. I put some washers right across. I'm going to rest this on top. I got my square up against my fence, and I just used a little block to just raise this one end up a little bit here. This corner to my blade, to the center of that blade. I am going to mark the corner of this slide on the side of this board. You got your marks here that you marked on your slide. You're going to take your square, just bring up to that line, and draw your line across. And that's where your slide. Now I'm going to hang it off both sides. I'll cut them off after. I will glue and screw these on. I'm going to use some CA glue to glue this down. Now I made my mark with my square. And then I will drill some holes and just drive some screws in place just to hold it in. And I'll just overhang it out. And I'll cut the excess off. Now before I drive my screws in, I'm just going to test it, make sure everything's okay before I screw it down. Okay, that fit pretty good. Now I'm just going to drill some holes and secure this in place. I'm going to make my first cut and I'm going to bring it into about 6.5 inches. This had dried for a while. I can take it out of the clamps and just sand down the edges. I'm going to take this over to the miter saw and I'm going to cut a 45-degree angle on the ruler. Now, with this ruler being cut at 45, I don't want to cut off the one. I'm going to bring it into about probably 3/4 of an inch in, or half to 3/4, and then make my cut. Now I need to zero in my 1-inch mark from this cut line. I got a 4-inch block, and I'm going to measure 1 inches from the end, and I'm going to mark it. Now I'm going to use a knife to mark it. I want this to be precise as possible. So I'll take one inches from the end, and I'm going to mark it. Now this kerf line that I cut here on the table saw, we're going to bring this 4 inches and make sure it's even on the back here. And we're going to bring it to the outside of this line here. Closer to that way. I'm going to bring the tip of this block to that line. I'm going to bring my ruler in. And I'm going to line up that one with that cut line I made with the knife. That way, when I make my cut, this 1-inch mark is zeroed out to this cut. So when I miter my corners, I can measure, use the ruler. If I need 10 inches, I can mark it at 10, and I know it's going to be 10 inches long. I'm going to drill a bunch of holes on this and screw this down. But before I do any of that, I'm going to cut the length right now. It'll be a lot easier to do it now than later. Now the cutoff piece that I have here, doesn't matter which end you miter, but I just flipped it around and I cut a miter on the other end, and I'm going to use this on the other side. In the meantime, I am going to drill some holes so I can screw this down. And I'm just going to drill pilot holes in the centers. Now we're going to start going over the holes that I did, just so I can bury my head of the screw with a bigger bit. That I have it down secured nice and tight and even with this back area. Take a mallet and just tap it over a touch if I'm out. Then I'm going to bring this 1 inch that's on my ruler up to that line that I made earlier on the block. And that should give me 1 inch to this line here. And I will double check, and it does. Now to get this straight, I'm going to just slide this all the way down this way and do the same thing. Make sure it's even on this side, clamp it down, and drive that screw in. For this other piece here, I got my square up against. But I'm going to just bring this right in tight. I'm going to line this right flush, and then I'm just going to cut it on the table saw to that line and cut right through the aluminum and everything. And that will give me, and by looking at this right now, it's a perfect square. Perfect 45. Now that I got it cut, I'm going to add a second slide in here. This one here, I'm just going to crazy glue, flip it over. Now this fits nicely, but it is, on this side, I'm going to cut this out. If you notice, the minute I let go, it tips over. So, I'm going to wax the side, the slides as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, whether I'm going to do an angle cut or just a, because you don't, this is all waste, you don't need this. So I will cut this. I'll figure out what shape I'm going to cut it into, and then I will put a T on the bottom of this side, because I do have, on my table saw, there's like a T track under here. So I can slip a T under there on the one slide on this side. That way when I slide it in, it will hold it in place. So for now, I'll start marking this out to find out where I'm going to cut, and then I can make my stop, and this is pretty much going to be done. I have this piece of metal that had a hole in it. I cut the ends off to make sure it fits in that slot, and I'm just going to position it here, and I will chisel this out, countersink it level, and drive a screw in it. And this I can move either way to adjust it. Now that little T, that little washer, is going to slide into the T-track of the table saw. Now it just stays. And look how much room I have here, quite a bit. So this is worked out perfect. Just a little bit of wax on the bottom of the slides and we're good to go. So the only thing left here to make is basically the stop block and maybe a little handle thing here, I'm not sure yet. Because I noticed by grabbing it a few times here, it does feel kind of uncomfortable feeling. Now that I got my 2 blocks cut, I'm going to cut a 45 on this one block only, and that's on the outside edge of the scale that I'm going to be using. And I'm going to cut that on the miter saw. I'm going to take it over to the drill press and drill a hole so I can run this through, and this is what I'm going to use to tighten. I drilled a small hole, then a bigger hole for the head to fit inside. Now I didn't drill it all the way through, Just the one hole I drilled through, 1/4 inch, and then a bigger hole for that to fit like that. Now I'm gonna just screw this all the way in. So I had to sand down this handle down a little bit on the sander because it kept hitting the board. So I just took it on the sander and just sanded down the edges a little bit, and now it's fine. Now as you can see, I can still move this with this tightened. I just got to take it apart and just trim the inside a little bit. Or I can put a padding on the inside, but I'm not going to go that route. I think I'm just going to take this bolt off and just shave this a little bit. And there you are. Perfect. Now on this side, I'm just going to create a little handle here. I'm just going to round this off, drill 2 holes and screw it to the board. I think you get a better grip than just hanging on to this, especially with a blade coming through there. I think I like this, having this better. So I will create a profile, something that's going to look decent. I got to cut this down more. I'm going to use a washer, line it up at the 2 corners and just make a round radius there. And I will sand it to that corner, to that line, just so it looks more appealing and not just a square block. I'm going to take 2 pocket hole screws. These are 1.5 inch. I'll pre-drill the holes. I'll screw it down on each end, and that gives me a nice comfortable feel here. Okay, let's give it a shot. Like I was saying earlier, that when you're doing picture frames, with a picture frame jig, it takes out all the math for you. Whatever picture you're cutting a frame for, you're going to measure that picture, and that's the measurements you're going to use when you're cutting your frame. You're not going to use your frame measurements. So for example, let's say I'm going to do a 6x8. I'm going to cut my first cut. I'm going to set the stop to 6. Flip it over. And this is giving you inside measurement. And I'm going to cut another piece the same way. The other side would be 8, so I'm going to move my stop to 8. Lock it in place. I already got my miter from the first time. Make sure it's pushed up to the side and cut my 8. I got my 2 6s and my 2 8s. And that's how easy it is. And it's a perfect fit. You're measuring picture itself, not the frame itself when you're doing your measurements. That pretty much wraps it up for this video. I'm going to finish off these picture frames and get them stained and sent out. And that takes care of that. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.